Dan Pagis was born into a Jewish family in Bukovina, Romania in 1930 and died in Jerusalem in 1986. He was first confronted with the Holocaust as a boy of 11 on a German transport train with his grandparents. Pagis survived the Holocaust and arrived in Palestine as a 16-year-old. He married, had children, and besides being a popular teacher of literature at the Hebrew University, he also became one of Israel's leading poets. Here in this carload, I am Eve, with Abel my son. If you see my other son, Cain, son of man, tell him that
For me, it's one of the ultimate poems on the Holocaust. This poem has to be taught together with the 4 verses in the book of Genesis, because he invokes the name Cain and Abel and Eve and Adam in the poem itself. So what Pagis is doing is making a direct connection between that first universal family, the first murder on earth. There are only 4 people on earth and one brother murders the other. Cain murders Abel. And it's an uninterrupted history of murder for Dan Pagis, because history for Dan Pagis is cyclical. And if you look carefully at the poem is not concluded. So you can read the poem from the end of the poem, it's cyclical, from the end of the poem to the beginning of the poem ad infinitum. And I think that one of the themes to be extracted from this particular fact is that for Dan Pagis, history is cyclical in terms of murder, from that single murder to mass murder. Other themes that emanate from the dialogue between the verses and the poem. Woman in the 2 tragedies, the tragedy of the murder of her one son, her younger son, and the place of woman in the tragedy of the Holocaust. You could touch on the theme of Holocaust denial, because Cain, in the story in the Bible, in one of the verses, denies. He doesn't know where his brother is. Am I my brother's keeper? So you have here a denial that is a prototype of Holocaust denial 3,000 years down the line. Subject of the mark of Cain. That is something that could be discussed as a theme. The need to leave testimony. If you look at the poem, the last line of the poem is, "Tell him that I." And Dan Pagis doesn't put any words into Eve's mouth. He's unable to actually formulate the testimony that she wants to leave. So one of the things that we suggest you could do with the students in your class is to have them write out this testimony that Dan Pagis didn't formulate. And then you have, of course, wonderful material for class discussion afterwards.